Hey everybody, got another exciting video for you and an application that you can try out for your organization. And even if you don't need this particular application, a lot of granular, pay attention to details have been done in this application. So this is a really good app to kind of tear apart and to see how I accomplish certain things. By no means is my way the right way or the best way. It's just a way that is functionally correct. And as developers, we all have different ways that we do things. There are lots of things in this application that I would have done differently, such as using components that I did not do. And there's a lot of things that I normally would do if I was doing a deliverable for a client application. But in any event, this is just a kind of a sample down and dirty app, and there are not best practices followed in some areas, especially comments that should have been put in that I did not put in. But nonetheless, this is an MVP style type application. And if you do decide to use it, it's really good as a launching point for you to pick up the app and add your fields, add additional approval processes, and power automate flows based on statuses and things of that nature. So what this is an application tracker. So as you develop applications in your organization and it moves through the software development process, you may have a set of checklists that you need to do for compliance to make sure that things are in a particular way before you move them over into, say, QA or prod or whatever you have. So here we have a drop down with a list of applications, and as you can see, this one's called HRIT with a bunch of really important tasks, such as task 1 through task 10. And you can see that the status currently is in process, and as you go ahead and you check off the items for complete, it will put a date timestamp, and once you have all of the items checked, as you just saw, that the status will auto move itself along to complete. Now, if we come over here to some of the other applications, such as any application, you'll get an error message or a warning that says the application is not configured for auditing. And we'll show you how to configure that towards the end of the video. The other part is this concept planning stage app, right? This is another one that is, not ready. Here is the IT app, and we can see that this is already done. Now, if you notice this checklist, this is an enhanced security checklist, right? And the checklist looks different than the other one. And so if we go back to HRIT, we can see this is a standard development checklist. And so the concept when I created this was to have your checklists as a template. And then when you create an application, you apply one of the checklist templates to it, and then you can go ahead and track that through the means of an auditing. So if we come back over here into and reset this screen, and we come over here under the menu, right? Okay, so this menu is using a timer, and it has a fade control on the RGB alpha channel. So the alpha channel is either 0 to 1, or you can do 0.5 to do half the transparency. Well, I put a timer on that, and it's fading through the transparency. So that's how you see that effect there. So like I said, lots of hidden little things that's in this. And, we've got an exit application here. Oh, and we've got a warning. Hey, are you ready to do this to save your changes? Actually, no, I don't want to exit. So lots of really cool things. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but there is a nice little shadow and some rounded corner here. All this is an HTML tag inside of here with some CSS to accomplish and pull off the shadowing. This is how you make your Power Apps pop and move into the next level. So lots of interesting ways that you could use this to visually make your applications more appealing. By no means is this the sexiest app that's ever been. It's quite simple, but like I said, it's a great learning application. So let's talk about some of the rest of the functional things that we got here. So I'm going to go into applications because everything starts, if you look at or think of things through a parent-child relationship, the applications is at the top, right? Because that's really the purpose. We're building apps and we need to track them. So as you create new applications, we have a modal window where you just give it a name. I'll just put FFF, right? And you can close these modal windows by clicking the little symbol here, or close icon. So again, a lot of attention to details was put into this app. So let's just call this test instead of FFF, right? So here's my new test app. And so what happens is, I'm going to go ahead and click on this, or you can click on either the row, or you can click on the pencil, and it will bring up this other window. Again, we've got a little close option to bring that in and out. So you can rename the test item, but you can also assign it an empty checklist. Now, this is an auto-assigned checklist. It's called empty. And there is a business rule in Dataverse that does this for you. And the other thing is the status is always put into new. Now, the only time you'll ever have to change the status is if you so desire, because as you go through the workflow, what'll happen is once you get ready to take this application and you assign it a checklist and you activate it for auditing, it'll automatically move it into the process or in process status. The other thing, as you saw, it will move it in and out of complete and back to in process depending on whether all of the checklist items are checked off or not. So this workflow is as automated as it can be within the application. Didn't use Power Automate for this, simply just baked it into the workflow of this particular application. Again, trying to put as many attention to details as possible. And so you'll also see here that I have the checklist empty. So let's go ahead and assign this standard development checklist, and let's update that to go ahead and save the change. And here's another attention to detail. So one of the things, now that I've assigned a checklist, I can view checklist items. So if I click that, essentially what this is going to do is it's going to take me over here to the checklist items, which is technically the task list. So if I come over here and I pick the standard development checklist, you'll see that I have all of these items that are in this particular checklist. But what's interesting or neat is that, I had to come to this screen through here and, click this menu item. And then I had to come and use the pull down to do that. Well, again, in the attention to details and thinking about the end user or end user experience, maybe they just want to go ahead and flesh out or verify or view the items in the checklist. So what I've done here is I've captured off the value for this, and when I do this, I post this in a navigate function with a context variable, and using that context variable, I'm able to assign the default item in the checklist. And what it does is it brings me in here automatically to the list. It pre-selects this item for me, and that was kind of tricky. I did get hung up a little bit of time trying to make sure I got the syntax right to pull this off. So even though I've got experience doing these types of Power Apps, this was one of these nuanced things that you don't do it too often. So in any event, I had to fiddle with the code a little bit. So this is a good learning lesson for you here. And so in any event, so this is all done here as well. And so again, these are the checklist items. So if we move backwards to checklists, so again, parent-child relationship, applications are assigned a checklist. And so you saw this was the drop down under the applications. And so this is where these are. So all this is a checklist is just a name. So if I go ahead and I look at, adding a new checklist name, I'll just call this new list. That's all it is. It's just a new checklist. And so again, adding the tasks, I use the same things because now that I have a checklist, I need to add the items. So I'll click this and it'll take me into new list, right? So it's taking me to the checklist page, again, down here, checklists, and it's automatically selected the list for me. So now all I have to do is add my items. So I'll just add 2 items, okay? And so now if we come down here to configure auditing, and I pick the test application, right? And so maybe I don't want to do this checklist now after all. So I'm going to go back over to apps. I'm going to pick my new app, and I'm going to assign it to the new list that I just created. And let's update that. Now let's go back over to the auditing. We'll pick the test application, and we can see here's the list and here's my 2 items, right? So what you're seeing here on the left side is the template, the new list template. And it says this application is not audited. Do you want to enable auditing? And yes, I do. So I go ahead and I click that. And what it does is it takes and copies information out of the template and puts it into an auditing table, which is very specific to this application. So you can report on it and you can do all kinds of activity. And because it's stored off in a separate table, you'd never ever touch or ruin this list You can use this list again and again and again with as many applications as you like, and all of the tracking data and the details is in the audit table so that you'll have great compliance and governance on each of the applications that you build. Now, if you don't like an item in the checklist, you can simply just go ahead and delete that, and it'll delete that item out of there. So you don't even have to use all of the items in the checklist. Now, if you want to change out items, you can program that to do it in line. Maybe you can do an editable grid here or lots of other things. Maybe you can do it even on the auditing place. So that's something I debated on whether or not to do, but then it started getting to the point where I was creating a full-fledged app, and there really was not any purpose to do that at this particular time because there really wasn't a need. Again, as an MVP app, I thought this was just good enough to release as is. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this last item, which essentially takes me right back to the beginning. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave this as it is. So now this application is configured and it's ready for auditing. And the other thing that I had a problem with is a nuance here is, I don't know if you noticed this, but with the grid and the menu overlapping it, it started to create a problem. So when I click this menu, I had to hide that grid. And the idea is if we went ahead and we navigated away, and then we come back and we go back into the configure auditing, how to flip a bunch of Boolean switches to make that happen. But in the event somebody clicks the menu and they click it again to get off of it, now the grid's disappeared. I needed a way to show that grid again. So that's why that is doing that, because the screen real estate and the overlapping of the menu caused a problem. And then things weren't quite clickable. So you can see there's some weird nuances with the way this screen was laid out and how that's configured. All right, anyway, so with this all done, we can come over here to the test application we just created, and you'll notice that now the status is in progress. Remember, I told you, once you activate it for auditing, it'll move along the status that we have picked out. And so if I go back into, again, the applications, and I go into the test in process, you can see it started off as new. Anytime I create a brand new application, two things happen. It's automatically assigned the empty checklist through the business rule that's in Dataverse, and then it also will go ahead and it will assign a new status because it is new. And so that's the nice part about this application, is that it kind of does a lot of the lifting for you as a user. Now, if I go through and I complete, you've seen this earlier, the status again will change to now it's complete. So the only time you manually would have to change the status of this is, let's just say, I don't know, this was never completed and the application for whatever reason was no longer needed. The business side of your organization said, we don't really need this application anymore. And so at that point, you may want to come in here and change this status to abandoned. And then you'll go ahead and update that. And then at that point, it will be abandoned. And you can create the metrics of a Power BI dashboard, or use the built-in metrics that comes with Power App, and maybe create a dashboard to show off this additional information in a very graphical way. So that's it for this application and how to use it as a user. Let's go ahead and now show you how to install this application into an actual environment. So I'm going to switch over here to our production environment. Let's go ahead and import the solution. And here is the solution currently right now. It's 10110. I'm going to go ahead and hit next and choose import. And that's really about as hard as it is to import the solution. So you can see up here, currently it is importing the solution. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and come back. Okay, so now we are back, and you can see that up here it says the solution was imported successfully, and here is the name of the solution called Power Apps Checklist. And if we go on into it, let's kind of investigate what this solution has. It's pretty simple and straightforward. There's not a tremendous amount of stuff in it, but let's walk through it. So we do have one application, and it's called App Checklist. And you can see the type over here is of Canvas, so it's a Canvas app. We have 5 tables in this solution. So we have the apps table, or app table. This holds the name of the applications. We have the checklist table. This just holds the name of the checklist items. We have the tasks, which belong to the checklist, or a child, rather, of the checklist. And then we have this thing called the app task audit log. And so this is where we actually copy off information from the app and the checklist, and this is where we're auditing the application separately so that we can report on them as its own isolated activity, and we don't mess with, per se, the checklist as a template. And I'm using air quotes when I say template. And the other thing here is we have a choices column, and this is simply for the statuses, so you can go into the choices and make any changes that you see fit. The items here are in process, complete, abandoned, and new, and so those are there. And so when you get to install this, there is something that is on the apps table. So if we go into the apps table, we just click here. What I actually want to do is click into the business rule and show you something. And if we look at the business rule, this is activated. And what it's doing is it's looking for the list item, okay? So the checklist. So if we come down to the table, here's the checklist table. And what we need to do in order to make this business rule work, so the first thing we need to do is click in on the business rule, and this will take a little bit of time to spin up usually. And so here it is, and what we need to do is deactivate the rule so we can edit it. And the reason that we need to edit it is because this item that it's referring to in the list here, it's showing a value of empty, and this value doesn't exist. So what we need to do is come over here and search by clicking the magnifying glass and see the list value empty. As you see it written out here with the open paren and all caps, EMPTY, and a close paren, that item needs to be in the list. So it's not in the list. What we need to do is we need to add it. So we're going to go ahead and click New. And what this will do is bring up the checklist form for adding a default record or adding a record. And all we need to do is put in the empty name and just hit save and close. And again, it exactly needs to be this way. Do not type it any other way other than how you see here. So all we need to do is press save and close. And that item should show up in the list, and it doesn't, so we'll just click this little refresh thing over here. And so now you see that empty is selected, and we'll just choose add. And so this is there, and now we just click apply to make sure that it is applied. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And now that we've hit saved, we can activate this one more time. And once it's activated, then we'll go ahead and close this window down. Let's just confirm here, and there should be a little dialog, and it is. So we'll choose activate one more time, which is the last step for activating a business rule. So it's now activated. So everything is good and life is well, and so we can now go ahead and close off this window, go back and tell it done. Okay, so for the most part, the configuration is done. Your application is now ready to use. It'll have no data in it, but the functionality will at least work. Okay, so let's go over here to apps. Let's select the app and choose play. I think I pressed play. I may have accidentally hit monitor, and I did. Try this again. Click play. And for those of you that are not aware, this little Power Apps bar at the top, I personally find it annoying, but you can get rid of it. What you can do is just add a parameter on the end of this, and we'll do another, another ampersand, which means and we're going to call this very specifically hide nav bar. So if you're not sure about this trick, again, it's called hide nav bar, and you say equals true. And when you do this and you add it and you just press enter, it will hide that purple Power Apps bar. So all you see is your actual application. So it's a cool, neat little trick if you are not familiar. Just again, ampersand, hide nav bar for any Canvas app, and you'll get rid of that, what I call annoying thing at the top. It's just more stuff for the user to potentially click on and not interact with your app in the way that maybe you intend. And to avoid potential problems, I always suggest using this in your links that you give to end users. So if you look at this link I have called app, it just allows me to take it, and if you notice, the hide navbar true is embedded into the link. So anytime you're linking to an app from an email or a resource or whatever, make sure you include the hide navbar equals true for the reasons that I mentioned here. It's not necessary, but again, it's just something nice to have. Okay, so now we are in the app, in a brand new app. If we use the pull down, there's nothing here. And if we come over here to applications, we'll see that we don't have anything there. Now the checklist, we should have one called empty because we just added that in the previous step when we went through the business rule. And now the checklist is empty and all this other wonderful stuff. So the first thing we need to do is add a new application. So we'll call this My App. And we'll hit tab and hit enter. Okay, so this will bring up the business rule. It was working as expected. It auto-assigned the empty list, which is what we want. And so there's a lot of functionality around this empty list and why you need to do it. So this is one of them. This is how the business rule kicks in. It auto-assigns this checklist for you. Now, programmatically, you could have done this in the Power App, but I just wanted to use different technologies as an MVP, or not an MVP, MVP, minimum viable product applications, to show you different ways of thinking around the Power Platform to do or pull off certain functionality. So if we come over here to the empty, programmatically, I did disable the ability to delete this because you don't want to be able to edit this or delete it. So if I put this as new list, in other words, I add a new list item, you'll see that I have the ability to edit this by clicking this, or I also have the ability to delete this, right? And so this does not exist for the empty list, so you don't accidentally delete it or monkey with it, because we don't want it to be deleted because of the functionality of the business rule. So that's why all of that has been done in the app. But in any event, that's how you install the app. That's the little nuances that you need to configure, and I hope this video was helpful and informative for you. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment box below, or reach out to Concentrix and ask for me, David Soden, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. That's it for this video. Thank you and have a great day.